So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Stefano Carrere. I'm a journalist for the Italian economic daily newspaper Il Sole 24 Ore. Our guests this afternoon are Thomas Schmid, that is National Chair of Democrats Abroad Japan, and Alexander Gonzalez, that is Democrats Abroad Delegate to the Democratic National Convention of last year. So they will speak first, and they are organizing for tomorrow a meeting and a candlelight to commemorate the 8 years of the Barack Obama presidency, and also for some other reason that I will explain. So please give a warm welcome to our guests. And please put in a manner mode your keitai. Thanks. Please, Thomas.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, good afternoon, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. We'd like to thank the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan for having us. So as introduced, my name is Tom Schmid. I'm the International Treasurer of the Democratic Party Committee Abroad, which is otherwise known as Democrats Abroad, and I'm also the National Chair of Democrats Abroad Japan. So I'll explain more about our organization later, but I'd like to give you a little bit of some information about Democrats Abroad so you understand something about our scope and our reach. We have 41 country committees that have been established around the globe. We have members in 190 different countries, and we have approximately 140,000 membership profiles in our database. When we communicate, we do so primarily electronically, but we also organize in country and at the local level. So that gives you an idea of who we are as Democrats Abroad. Now, today, Democrats Abroad Japan is very pleased to announce our Inauguration Day March and Vigil. The march will take place hours before the inauguration of President Trump, and we will be thanking President Obama for his 8 years of service and expressing our continuing support for his political agenda in light of the President-elect's campaign promises to roll back much of that agenda. Our march will coincide with events taking place around the world as a part of the Democrats Abroad Global Week of Action. Here in the Asia-Pacific region, events are being held in Australia, Hong Kong, New Zealand, and Singapore. The March and Vigil in Tokyo are two separate but related events. The vigil will take place near the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo and will last from 5:30 to 6 p.m. Due to security reasons, the vigil is a closed event that is limited to 25 pre-selected people. Our purpose is to thank our embassy and consular officials and staff throughout Japan for the services they provide for American citizens. In particular, we want to thank those officials who have recently or will soon leave Japan as a result of the political transition, including, of course, Ambassador Caroline Kennedy. Democrats Abroad Japan Vice Chair Leslie Ann Rogers, who is seated here and present today, and I will deliver flowers to embassy officials to express our thanks and appreciation on behalf of our members. Meanwhile, from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., our marchers will assemble in Hibiya Park near the Nishi Saiwai Gate. All marchers must arrive prior to 6:30 p.m., and after some brief speeches, we'll march to Mikawadai Park in Roppongi, where the march will immediately disperse due to the park's assembly rules. In total, the march is expected to last about 1 hour, and rather than making a lot of noise, we will be marching quietly, holding LED candles in order to draw visual attention to our group at night. There are no contingency plans for the weather, so we'll be marching rain or snow. When we march in Tokyo, we won't be marching alone. As you may know, the Women's March on Washington is taking place on January 21st in Washington, D.C., and in many cities around the world. I'm very pleased that the Tokyo Sister March will be joining us, and we are collaborating with them to express our thanks to President Obama for his steadfast support of social equality for all, his support for a women's right to choose, and his support for equal pay for equal work. It's worth mentioning that our march has evidently already drawn some attention from the general public. We've been informed that there will be an anti-American counter-protest taking place, although we aren't sure exactly which group will be protesting our march or why. In any event, we respect their right to assembly and free speech, and we hope their intent is to remain as peaceful and respectful of differing views as we will be. So now I'd like to take a moment to address, as they say, the elephant in the room, Donald Trump. As you all know, President-elect Donald Trump will take the oath of office tomorrow, becoming the 45th President of the United States. As he is sworn into office, recent polling indicates that he has the lowest approval rating of any new president in recent memory at around 40% favorability. Although he did win the election, he lost the popular vote by roughly 3 million votes. His public statements as president-elect have caused American citizens at home and abroad great concern about the direction in which he will steer our country. And it's not only Americans who are concerned. Concerns have been expressed by America's allies as well as its rivals. Quite recently, it seems the controversy surrounding Donald Trump's business interests, presidential campaign, and behavior will remain long after Inauguration Day. This stands in contrast to President Obama, who had an approval rating of 68% when he took office. Despite 8 years in the White House, which takes a toll on any president, his current approval rating is still at 57%. The policies he worked to implement include restoring the American economy after the 2008 financial crisis, expanding access to health insurance to roughly 20 million Americans who had no coverage, improving the environment through an energy policy that increased reliance on natural gas and alternative energy, pursuing peace by normalizing U.S. relations with Cuba and ending the war in Iraq, just to name a few. And President Obama achieved success despite having to deal with, shall we say, an uncooperative Congress, and in the face of false personal attacks claiming that he is a Kenyan, a Muslim, and a socialist. So, on the eve of President-elect Trump's nomination and President Obama's last day in office, the majority of Americans are very concerned about what this transition of power will mean for the United States, for the world, and for our lives. This is why Democrats Abroad Japan has organized the Inauguration Day March and Vigil. As Democrats, we want to thank President Obama for his global and domestic leadership and for his service. We want it publicly known that we support the agenda that he tirelessly worked to achieve and that we want our country to continue moving in that direction. Let me be clear. Our march is not an anti-Trump protest. We won't be chanting anti-Trump slogans, protesting the election, or portraying him in a negative light. What we will be doing is marching in support of the issues and policies that we believe in as Democrats. As you know, there were many demonstrations in the United States immediately after the election. And I recall a news story that had quoted a high school student who I think said it best. She said that she accepted that Donald Trump was going to be the next president, but she said, and I'm paraphrasing, that if he's going to be president, he has to listen to us. So when we take to the streets of Tokyo tomorrow night, what we want the world to know is that the Democratic Party is alive and well, and we're ready to continue the political struggle in America to achieve social equality for all members of society, to protect the environment, to make sure that all Americans have health care, and to make sure that America maintains its alliances and strategic partnerships with democracies throughout the world. Now, before I pass the mic to Alex, I'd like to provide a bit more context about who we are as Democrats Abroad and how we operate. So Democrats Abroad is the official overseas arm of the Democratic Party. We are an organization that relies entirely on our volunteers. We operate with 0 full-time staff. We are entirely self-funded through the donations of U.S. citizens, and we only exist due to the dedication and hard work of our volunteers. Thus, Democrats Abroad embodies the spirit of a grassroots organization in a way that I would argue no other official Democratic Party organization does. And we are much more than a community for Democrats living overseas. Democrats Abroad operates like a state party, which means we have representation on the Democratic National Committee. This means that we participate in key party decisions, such as drafting the party platform, and our DNC members will vote in the upcoming election for the new DNC chair. We also elect and send delegates to the Democratic National Convention, like Alex, so we contribute our voice to the presidential nomination process. Our primary mission is registration of overseas voters, but we also conduct advocacy in Congress for issues that impact Americans living overseas, such as Medicare portability and tax issues. In Washington this May, Democrats Abroad was able to add language to the 2016 party platform in support of revising the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. This law, known as FATCA, is laudable in that it pursues American tax cheats who hide their assets abroad, but it also ensnares honest Americans living simple lives overseas. This has the impact of denying these honest Americans access to consumer banking services in their countries of residence. So here in Japan, our job is to organize the democratic participation of the rapidly growing constituency of Americans living overseas. Our members take on roles that range from activists, grassroots organizers, and voter registration volunteers to elected party officials. Of course, we are disappointed with the results of the election, but President Obama has given us hope and inspiration. He said, "Our work is and will always be unfinished." That's the imperative of citizenship, the idea that with hard work, people who love their country can change it. That is what Democrats Abroad is all about. And we hope that our march in Tokyo, as a part of the Global Week of Action, will be one more step towards that change. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I'd like to turn it over to Alex Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Tom. Well said. Good afternoon, members of the SCCJ. My name is Alexander Gonzalez. I was a pledged delegate at large for Bernie Sanders, representing the Asia-Pacific region, and I worked as a staffer on his campaign as well for a time in the summer. I'm honored to be marching with my fellow expatriates in solidarity with those in the United States and around the world in thanking President Obama for his years of service and reminding the incoming administration that our commitment to the issues that affect working class and middle class America is stronger than ever. The United States is experiencing one of the most tumultuous periods of its history. Citizens around the country and the world are going through economic pain, experiencing difficulty in accessing healthcare benefits, plummeting into deeper education debt, and losing faith in a transitioning government that threatens to undermine the basic values on which we were founded. A Trump presidency threatens our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The rights of LGBT citizens, the right for a woman to choose, equality for people of rich cultural backgrounds, such as the African American and Latino communities, are all facing a time of scrutiny second to nothing we have experienced in modern history. No longer will our country be the haven for those in peril and escaping the horrors of war and oppressive governments. We face an incompetent administration with unqualified nominees for the cabinet that very well may be confirmed to lead our country into what may almost be certain disaster. And the corporate elites will have deeper pockets that they will continue to line, not a penny of which will go to hardworking American citizens. All of this as our president-elect continues to go on tirades that will bring us to the brink of a national security crisis. We can and must prevent these issues from becoming reality. Our party is transitioning to fight for people and to activate a movement that will sweep all across America. That is why it is up to us as citizens to hold the incoming Congress and administration accountable and to hold their feet to the fire when they threaten to devalue the lives of our friends, families, and neighbors. The Democratic Party led a valiant effort to tackle these issues with the most progressive platform we have ever presented. Unfortunately, we were not successful in doing so. However, the party seeks new opportunities in the form of progressive change. This transition will invite progressive ideals, dedicated public servants, community organizers, and volunteers to stand ready to bring much-needed change to the party. We hope these values will appeal to all of working and middle-class America and invite them to a seat at our table. That change comes in the form of talking to your friends and family about candidates who share their concerns and will run campaigns based on the issues. It is about grassroots organization that rallies around principles that bear the needs of the American people in mind. Party reform is about signing up with your local party chapter back home and becoming an ambassador for your community. Educate those expatriates who live in your state or area about the issues that affect you and extend that education to the rest of the expatriate community. That is how we maintain the energy of our movement and how we will unite this country under principled values. We ask everyone to take the time to understand everyone's perspective, including those who voted against the establishment. Their strife needs careful understanding and consideration above all, so that we may reinforce our commitment to working with them as well. It is a long road ahead to 2020. However, there is much to do between now and then. The race for the Democratic Party chair is on. We ask that you petition to your party representatives to vote in the best interests of the party. We ask that you concentrate on local and state elections that are often overlooked and hide in the shadows of the off-year election seasons. And we ask that you contact your state, local, and federal representatives to implore them to make decisions that will benefit the community and not elite class America. Remind your friends and family back home about the issues we face as citizens abroad and educate them about solutions they can participate in. Trump has indicated a regressive attitude towards issues that will straighten working and middle class America, and the Democratic Party can offer the solution to resist many of the dangers we will be facing and to channel it into a productive agenda for all people. This is a call to arms, although it is without violence. We will need all hands on deck to prepare for many battles ahead. We will not fight each other, but we will fight for our issues, and we will be compassionate to our fellow citizens and neighbors. Join us at Democrats Abroad and give us your hand in reforming the party. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you for the speeches. So Thomas was more institutional and Alexander was more passionate. So I would like to open the Q&A session. So is anyone?
Smith, CLSA. I wanted to ask about trade, which is worrying people just about everywhere at the moment. When I looked into your laws, you have an incredible range of laws that can be used to put almost unlimited increases in tariffs and voluntary restraint agreements. And as I understand it, litigation would take probably the rest of the president's time in office. So I suppose the question is, the president has had delegated to him powers which would be used for the exact opposite of what they were intended for. They were intended to sign trade treaties, and they're being used to unwind free trade. What can be done to remove those powers to ensure that they're not used in a way that was intended by neither Congress nor the Constitution?
Well, that's a fascinating question and a very, very important one. I don't know that I can give you a really clear answer on that, but I do know that the lens that we view from a legal side, I don't know that I can give you a clear answer on that. From a political side, I think what we're seeing is a debate over where the country wants to go with respect to trade. And in this election, we saw both people on both sides of the aisle resistant to free trade deals. I think that it's a debate that we need to have, but I don't know that it's going to be incredibly constructive at this point due to a lot of the ill will that exists between the parties. But I'm sorry, I can't give you a great answer on. I'm not a trade expert, and what we do with Democrats Abroad is we organize our people overseas, and we lobby for interests that impact our constituents overseas, but we don't specifically get into the nitty-gritty, if you will, of trade deals. So I'm sorry to sidestep your question, but I don't think I can give you a very good answer. I don't know if Alex has anything to add to that, but.
No, I think if it becomes a pertinent issue for Americans abroad and they bring that issue to our organization, then we will certainly review it and take a look at how we can pitch in our 2 cents to what's going on back home. So if it's just another bullet to add to the many list of concerns we have as citizens overseas, we will certainly take care of it.
Sorry to sidestep you there.
Please.
Hi, Hiroshi Hiyama, AFP. Thanks for your time and information. I just wanted to ask you more details about the tomorrow night. So, excuse me, from 5 at the U.S. Embassy, so 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. So that's a 30-minute thing, and there's 25 people coming to the U.S. Embassy to give thanks. So I guess I'm assuming there's going to be like a flower. Is there? Will you be doing it outside of the gate, or is it going to be inside thing? Is that something that we can see?
So what we'll be doing is we'll be gathering at 5:30 for reasons that evidently involve the counter protest. The counter protesters want to show up at 6 p.m. and it seems that the police are allowing that to happen. So they're encouraging us to depart as soon as possible.
Okay.
What we will do, I think the way it's going to happen is that at 5:30 we will be there and be ready. We'll stand there to have our vigil, and then probably after about 10 minutes or so, Leslie and I, so around 5:40 or so, Leslie and I will go into the embassy security checkpoint.
Right.
So I don't believe that there will be a photo op with the embassy staff who receive it. However, there will be opportunities to watch us walk in with the flowers.
Right. Do you expect that there will be a time for you to maybe like give a little bit of a sound bites, I guess, outside of the?
We won't have a lot of time, but we can try and do that. But there will also be more time in the march. So the march that leaves Hibiya Park, we'll have press covering that and maybe more time in the park once we get back there.
That was going to be my second question, which is going to be so from 5:30 to 6:30, there's going to be an hour thing. So you're not going to be there, not at the start at least of the march.
Correct, not right at the start. After we leave the vigil, we'll head straight to Hibiya Park.
Okay, and there'll be people going to this park in Roppongi. Do you expect that to be like a silent march of a sort? There's no things being said?
The basic idea is a silent march, but we're not going to tell people to be quiet.
Right.
If people amongst us want to chant, as long as the chant fits within the scope of our march, which is standing up for what Democrats believe, then they'll be free to chant.
Okay, so not necessarily like, as you said, like not anti-Trump march per se, but it's just a message of Democratic capital D. How many people do you expect to show for that?
It's really, really hard to say.
Yeah.
If you believe all of the RSVPs, we might have 200 people. But given the weather and the realities of online RSVPs, we're hoping to have 50 to 100, and anything over that would be fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
People of other nationalities and Japanese are welcome.
Yes. Everyone is welcome, provided that they're willing to stay within the scope of our march and not turn it into an anti-Trump march, but to keep it positive and focused on the issues that we support, and thanking President Obama.
Please.
Takeshi Kawasaki, former Asahi Shimbun reporter. Do you have friends supporting Republicans in this country, in Japan? Are they happy now? Are they jubilant, confident? Do you have any information on Republican abroad? Second question is that, what are you going to talk with the new ambassador, new American ambassador to Japan? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll take it first and then pass it to Alex for his comments. Actually, I don't think I do have any Republican friends in Japan. Obviously, I have Republican friends and family back in the United States. But maybe I can say there is an organization or a group that purports to be an organization called Republicans Abroad, and there are at least 2 people who I've seen active in Japan, and one of them in particular was very angry about the FATCA law that I had mentioned, and he left Democrats Abroad because he didn't think we were doing enough, which I disagree with. But but I think I would suppose, I hate to speculate, but if I do speculate, I suppose that the Republicans that do live here in Japan are probably just as split as the Republican Party back home over whether or not Donald Trump is going to take the country in the right direction. And from what I hear back home through friends, stories from friends, it's not just white, uneducated males that supported Donald Trump. I know examples of rich, or wealthy airline pilots and wealthy doctors that support Donald Trump as well. So this is a little outside the scope of your question, but from my perspective, to really understand why it is that the constituency that voted for Donald Trump, we really need to study that carefully to figure out how this broad coalition formed to support him. Alex? Oh, I didn't answer your second question about the ambassador. I'm sorry. Frankly, it's been difficult to have opportunities to speak with the ambassador, and we did invite Ambassador Kennedy to speak at our Democrats Abroad Asia Pacific Regional Meeting, which was held here in Tokyo in 2015. But you may be aware of the Hatch Act and other laws in the United States that restrict public officials from engaging in politics. There are exceptions, and I think that the embassy, and I wish the embassy would be more open to coming to our events and just speaking from the perspective of the embassy and what they do for outreach or citizen services and things of that nature. But we haven't had tremendous luck yet. But I would like to extend an open invitation to the U.S. Embassy to please feel free to come to our events and speak strictly on behalf of the federal government and from that position. Sorry, Alex?
Sure. I used to be stationed in Sasebo with the U.S. Navy. I have a few friends that are conservative that are still stationed here. And I think the general consensus is that they're very torn, especially as members of the military. Most of them supported a third-party candidate, and maybe 1 or 2 casually supported Donald Trump. And they're members of the military, so they're limited on how much they can speak as to the opinions they have about President-elect Trump. But I will tell you that the general consensus is that they feel a little bit more confident about the leadership positions that he's decided to make, such as that of the retired General Mattis, James Mattis, from the United States Marine Corps. And I think that there's a bit of a, pull for confidence there. So other friends have expressed anxiety that they don't feel that his leadership will be strong. They're nervous about where tensions might rise to, and they're very cautious about how they will be proceeding in that capacity. So that's it.
I have a question for both of you, but first I would like to tell you and share you a story from an exchange of email with my friends. Story is, once upon a time, there was a man, a very rich man, with a very nice-looking wife, who made money in the real estate business and became famous as a household name with the televisions. And suddenly he, without any experience in public service, he became chief of the government and ran the country. How? Winning the election. But how? With simple messages posing as a champion of change that resonated among a public that was sick and tired of the ordinary politics. And also with a skillful manipulation of the media, imposing himself always at the center of the public discourse and at the center of the TV prime time almost every day, because everybody was talking about him, about his hair, about his dealing with women, and also about his possible hidden deal with the Russians. So this man was Silvio Berlusconi 24 years ago. So we Italians, we find some similarities. I mean, for us was kind of déjà vu, but was also a big surprise because at that time most Italians were thinking, oh, this kind of things will never happen in America. Why? Because America is, the oldest Republican democracy in the world. Well, except San Marino in Italy, it's a small country inside the border of Italy. And because, in America, there is a strong system of check and balances, there is no tradition of drift toward politics as a one-man show and so on. So, my question is, are you worried about specific single issues? Obamacare repealing or some other strange or remarks of Donald Trump, or are you in some way also worried about the evolution or involution of democracy in your country?
I guess if I go first here, I think obviously I'm worried about both. In the last election, my number one issue was campaign finance reform and getting the money out of politics. As I thought about that and what we needed to do, it seemed to me that the Supreme Court was the key. And with some older Supreme Court justices, my feeling was we have got to win this election because we need to stack the U.S. Supreme Court with Democratic justices that are going to rule the right way for the American people, and interpret the Constitution the way it's supposed to be interpreted, and allow Congress to pass laws to limit campaign contributions. And I'm saying this as international treasurer of Democrats abroad. That didn't happen, and now what that means, and getting back to your point about the long-term implications, I'm really terrified that that Donald Trump may be able to appoint several Supreme Court justices that will really have America over a barrel for for generations to come. And while just like the Republicans are saying with Obamacare, all of these things that he does can be overturned by legislation or repealing executive orders when we get a Democrat back in the White House. But what goes on in the Supreme Court and the way that's interpreted as precedent is really going to make us struggle, I think, for generations to come, and it's going to make my personal number one issue of getting the money out of politics very difficult to achieve. And that being the case, I mean, my belief is that the way things work now is the United States has a system of legalized corruption. That's the campaign finance system that we have. And I don't like it, but we're not going to make the change we need until we get the money out of politics. So it's going to be business as usual. So institutionally, I'm very concerned it's going to be the same old for years to come.
I have a more optimistic outlook, I think. It's important to remember that 27% of the eligible voters in America voted for Donald Trump. And then of course, looking at the popular vote numbers, it gives a very opposite perspective. But we have to remember about those deep red state voters, citizens who we need to engage in. And this election was an election of unprecedented events, unprecedented presidents, unprecedented candidates, and unprecedented movements. And those movements are continuing to thrive. They're continuing to get out the message. And hopefully they'll be entering those communities that felt so strongly in favor of Donald Trump, and will hopefully introduce a new perspective that will allow them to vote a candidate that is more in line with their ideals. So I'm very confident that over the next few years we will have time to work on that. For me in particular, the biggest issue I'm concerned about is the environment. I want to turn over the world, I want to turn over to my children a world that is going to thrive. And for me, Donald Trump's blatant disregard for environmental issues is shocking, it's upsetting, but I'm going to continue to fight for it. And that is why everybody needs to pitch in their 2 cents and fight for the issues they feel passionate about it as well.
Please.
Kazuhito from Asahi Shimbun. My question is, as Americans living in Japan, what would you like to remind Trump regarding the U.S.-Japan relations? He's been saying something about host nation support and nuclear weapons and stuff. Yeah, please.
I would just say to Donald Trump to remember that the alliances that we've built over years around the world have been there for a reason, and they have very serious implications for peace and security throughout the world. And I would encourage Donald Trump to study the issue carefully, not to assume that he knows too much about Japan. I'm sure he's been to Japan, but having lived in Japan for 5 years, which is a short amount of time compared to many others, I know that I know so much more about Japan and the region than so many Americans back home. Obviously, within the scope of his executive power, whatever choice he makes will be his. But I would encourage him to study it carefully and consult with his advisors, because there's no question that the U.S. alliance with Japan, and this was Obama's policy, is very important. And after all, in our march, we're going to be thanking Obama for his leadership and intelligence on these matters. So I have no hesitation adopting the Obama presidency's perspective of the U.S.-Japan relationship, and I think it should be continued in that way.
I think it's very important for Donald Trump to remember that there are citizens in Japan that passionately and fervently believe that although our commitments to Japan should be honored and we should maintain peace and stability in the region, that there are organizations and citizens here who feel very passionately and strongly in favor of peace. And they made that clear when the Diet decided to revise that. So I want him to take those sort of things into consideration as well. We are in no capacity to speak to that, but there are Japanese citizens who would definitely have voiced their concerns to me about that, and I always keep that in mind when thinking about relationships with Japan. So.
Siegfried Nittel, freelancer from Germany. Every time I thought Mr. Trump's election to president it's not a single thing, a single occasion, a single event. Or I think there is a long time now in the American policy. There is a kind of what makes American policy and a bit kind of a dysfunctional. Perhaps Mr. Obama, he couldn't often go abroad because they had to deal with a divided Congress. That's the reason he couldn't handle the things abroad, because the Congress was a kind of he had to fight with the Congress, and I think the fundamentalist group in America are very strong and make kind of functioning policy a bit not possible. So what in this way, I think, is there not a general problem in the American society that had to be resolved? That Mr. Obama wanted to unite America again. It was in his first presidency. The result was, after 8 years, America is more divided than before. How is it? What's the future and this for the United States? This kind of dividing society, is it more going in this direction, or is there a way to bring the Americans together again? Or?
Well, thank you for the question and very keen points and observations. Despite the fact when I was talking about campaign finance in the Supreme Court, which was quite doom and gloom, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be participating in Democratic Party politics if I didn't believe in the long run in the American people. And I think that there have been years of problems that have been caused by Congress and oftentimes the other side of the aisle. But what I'm really excited about, and this, thank God it's finally time for me to talk about something I'm excited about, is where I see the Democratic Party going in the future. And it's all about the youth. And some of these things like same-sex marriage and just dealing with people who are transgendered, for example. The younger generation doesn't understand what the problem is, doesn't understand why people are so concerned about these issues. And as they grow up, I think they are very progressive-minded and in a way that we haven't seen. And I think that bodes very well. And the question has been what's the Democratic Party going to do about it? Is the Democratic Party going to remain where it was, or shift to be prepared to embrace this demographic that is already here and will be coming up in greater numbers in the future? I'm very pleased to say that in my view, with the upcoming DNC chair election, I see a lot of great hope for positive change in the Democratic Party, which will embrace this demographic and these views. And I think that's where the majority of Americans truly lie. Remember, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. And we have problems with our voting laws. So we're discouraging people from voting. We're stripping people off the voter rolls inappropriately. And all of these things, if we can just get back to plain and simple democracy and respect for the right to vote, and listening to a lot of different voices within the party, I think we can make a lot of tremendous change and win a lot of elections in the future. My concern is that they're institutionally with the Supreme Court, and at least in the short term with the executive branch, there are storm clouds ahead. But in the long run, I'm very optimistic, and I think we are going to turn the corner. It's just not going to happen as quickly as I had hoped.
Where the Republicans had so much success was with the Tea Party. We saw that they built a very fundamental grassroots campaign within communities, smaller communities, that spoke to people, quite frankly. And what we're seeing now is a similar movement happening with the progressive wing that is going to hopefully reshape the way people in those communities think. It's important to remember, I mean, this is politics, yes, but we have to go beyond politics. The legislation that is going to be proposed and in decisions that are made in the White House, those affect people's lives. Those make a difference between whether someone's going to be able to put bread on the table and take their child to go get the medical care they need. So, and those are whenever you talk to people on the progressive side, Tea Party side, it doesn't matter. These issues come up time and time again. They're a common theme. So we have to go a little bit beyond the party and extend our hand to those people as well, engage with them and let them know that we are willing to fight for those issues that they are concerned about. We must lend and put a loudspeaker up to their voices and amplify this issue. And I think that strategy will build an effective, it will build an effective strategy to in the time coming up to the midterms and the next presidential cycle. So.
One more comment on that. You know, the saying is that evil triumphs when good people do nothing. And remember, voter turnout was down, and it was the failure to. America is filled with good people, just like every country in the world. People, I think, are inherently good, and there are bad people that are very skilled at. A minority of bad people can cause a lot of trouble for everybody else. So that's why we need to get back to the basics, reassess what happened over in the last presidential campaign, and figure out how to reach out to more people and get them interested and excited about voting and participating in democracy, because that's when it's really robust, and that's when democracy works its best, when participation is maximized.
Please.
Michael Penn of the Shingetsu News Agency. You said that evil triumphs when good people do nothing. Right now, I think there's a lot of Americans in Japan. I don't know, maybe you can tell us about how many Americans there are in Japan. And probably most of those Americans are progressive and liberal because they live abroad, and this tends to influence people in that direction. What is it that your organizations need in order to strengthen yourselves, in order to reach a larger proportion of that group? What are you calling for, basically, to bring this progressive movement more deeply to Americans in Japan in an organized fashion?
This press conference. We have, you know, social media is great, and we're on social media, and we reach out through that, and as a result of our march, I mean, we're getting, you know, I'm constantly doing Facebook group approvals to get people into our group, and we're getting new members in through our website, democratsabroad.org, on a very regular basis. But the reality is, I mean, we're not where we want to be, but we're proud about where we are. We're at about 3,400 members at the moment, which is a good size. I apologize for giving you outdated information, and it's certainly more than this now, I think. But I think the last MOJ statistic I saw from several years ago estimated 50,000 Americans in Japan. I don't know whether that's military and civilian, but I did see a number more recently that was higher than that, but I can't remember exactly what it was. So we have a lot of work to do, but we need, it's sort of we need to approach it from all angles. We need people that are willing to be active on social media and sit at a pub and try and get people to come out and join them for political discussion in all parts of Japan. That's on the very small side. On the larger scale side, we need more press and media attention, which is it's incumbent upon us to have events that are interesting to the media. But the good news is, the bad news is Donald Trump's going to be president. Good news is, it really has been given a sense of excitement and urgency that was lacking during the presidential campaign, certainly in comparison. So now is an opportunity for us to draw on that energy and really try and get the message out to the tens of thousands of Americans that do live in Japan. And we just need to keep moving on, keep building, and that's what we've done when Democrats Abroad Japan started with not so many members, and it's taken us time, but now we're up to over 3,000. So that's a really good encouragement. And actually, due to the global presidential primary that we held, we got about 1,000 new members just last year. So, Alex?
I think Tom said it best. I completely agree. I would just like to remind people that when they engage with other American citizens who have not yet heard of our organization, just to remember to have a careful touch and to remember that they must take into consideration who they're speaking to, and when they are talking about the issues, that they study the issues from their home districts and states a little bit more closely, and to bring it to the table so that we can keep ourselves informed and ready to support legislation and candidates that are going to be in our best interests, and to defend against those that aren't.
Okay, anyone else? Well, another question from me, because I remember, in the Berlusconi era, being an Italian abroad in a foreign country was a bit of embarrassment. But regardless of political orientation, the real problem in this case is that Berlusconi, like Trump, when speaking, he was having in mind always domestic audience. He didn't care about the effect of what he said on foreign audiences. He didn't care about something that could be misunderstood or sound offensive. One thing I remember, for instance, because it could be like Trump. Once Berlusconi was in Moscow and was asked, "What do you think about Obama?" And he created an incredible international fuss because he answered, "He's young and he's also sun-tanned." He's tanned. So it was terrible remarks for a foreign audience. But for a domestic audience, for an Italian audience, it was not that bad, in the sense that the Berlusconi television spread the idea that if you want to be nice, beautiful, you have to be tanned. You have to take sun. No? So, being an Italian, that was considered just a joke of Berlusconi, but even, nothing derogative, basically. But if you translate in English or Japanese or any other languages, of course, it was very derogative to define, a black man, to say he's tanned, right? So I think, I sense that Trump is, in this sense, is like Berlusconi. So he just think about domestic audience. So my question is, isn't it nowadays in the Trump era a bit of an embarrassment to be American abroad?
No, I don't take it that way at all. I do apologize. One of the most frequent things I do is when Donald Trump comes up and they say, so what do you think about Donald Trump? I say, I'm sorry. But no, I'm not embarrassed to be an American. I'm not embarrassed to be an American living overseas. There was a time in the past where all the nationalism over the American flag and bothered me, and I felt that that they had appropriated the our flag, and that progressives and Democrats somehow weren't allowed to to wear the flag. That flag is just as much mine as it is any other American's, and I'm very proud to be an American. And in that role, as a passionate citizen living overseas, my job is to organize people to say, this is nonsense, what just happened in the last election, and it's time for us to get our guy or our gal in the White House. So it's really just a call to action, and I will never be embarrassed by anything that Donald Trump does, because that's him. He can deal with his own actions, but I don't accept them as anything that I've done.
Okay.
Nothing to add. I feel very much the same way.
Okay, so if there is anyone else, I can bring to a conclusion this session. We thank our guests, Thomas and Alexander, and we hope that, in the future we'll come back again to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan.
Great. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.